How is everyone today? We have had a bit of a last-minute mix-up. Well, not mix-up. That's not the word I'm looking for. I tend to use language that is a bit too archaic. Change-up. We have a bit of a change-up. I was going to do a review today, except number one, there was a work emergency for the person that was supposed to assist me with said review. And then the one-to-one timing and role-playing thing popped back up on Twitter. And I find this entire thing absolutely fascinating because one, it's very foreign to me. And two, I do not quite understand when people get so intensely, shall we say, passionate about this. So I thought we would talk about it today. I was very much hoping we were going to have a pro and a con and a neutral. But the the pro people are all surprisingly busy today. So yeah, I know what you're gonna do. It was short notice. Though I did start trying this morning. I do have the Ginger's Guide to Running 5e using real-time calendar, which we'll go over a little bit. And Daniel from Driving and Dragons is apparently quite familiar with the system. And the common nerd and I are going to just get convinced by by whoever has the best argument. So, as always, let's do our little quick introductions, 2 or 3 lines, how you got into gaming, what's your favorite game, and then we will say hello to the chat, and then we will start the discussion. Daniel, let us know who you are and where we can find you.
Well, you can find me over at Driving and Dragons. We're just coming in 45 minutes off the heels of my weekly Intelligence as a Dump Stat video, where ironically I often mock the people who are obsessive about one-to-one time. But as far as gaming goes, having a favorite's really a difficult thing to say, because I live and die by the philosophy that the best game is developed by the game master picking the correct game and system for what they want to run. So my favorite game is whatever system best runs what I'm going for that particular campaign. If you had to put a gun to my head, I'd probably say Cyberpunk 2020. In particular, the Interlock Unlimited system. But I'm a 3.5 guy when it comes to D&D. I think it is far and away the best that Dungeons and Dragons has to offer for the most things. And then you can find me floating around on X and Facebook and whatnot, usually sharing my opinions, whether they're wanted or not.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that people tend to get kind of sucked into 1 or 2 games most of the time. I told somebody once that, I have run about 15 games and there are 4 of them I really like right now. And they were really fascinated. They were like, I've never met anyone that has played or run like that much variety. And I was like, then you should go do so. Like more stuff, more games. And I find it incredibly interesting because I edit for role players or for role playing developers. And the number of people.
I don't know if I froze or you froze there.
I'm sorry, say again?
I missed half of what you were saying. I don't know if you were asking me a question or not because the whole thing froze up on me.
Oh,
I heard her.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm amazed at the number of people who have played one game and then decide they're going to go develop their own game, because 60-75% of the time what they end up doing is just developing something that already exists. So I have this very big pet peeve about, if you're going to develop a game, awesome, but go play more games first.
Yeah.
All right. Common nerd.
Yes, I am Jesse the Common Nerd. I bring you pop culture and all things 33 Common Sense Lens. I cover pretty much, basically, if there's a fandom attached to it, I'll cover it. I covered stuff on One Piece because the fans were getting attacked long before I ever even watched a single episode of Oda's absolutely incredible masterpiece. So yeah, that's what I do, and that's where I am. You can find me on all the platforms. I'm on genuinely, if there's an audience there and I've asked to be there, I'm on that platform. So Rumble, YouTube, all of that kind of stuff. I've been nuked a couple of times, and I'm still here fighting the good fight. So if you can find me 7 days a week on this on all of my channels doing stuff, at one point or another. But yeah. So as far as gaming's concerned, so this is funny because I wasn't entirely sure what this conversation was about. So I love your ask about the gaming situation here, because like, as far as tabletop RPGs are concerned, my experience is extremely limited. But like, I've got a lot of friends that are huge into these settings, and this is normally what gets me into these conversations and making videos about all this kind of stuff and talking about this kind of stuff. Because I have a friend of mine that has literally been a game master for like 20, 30 years. You know, I've got other friends of mine that have been players for decades. I've got, and so it's like I'm big into Warhammer 40K. Right. So we're working on doing Wrath and Glory and trying to get a game going for all of that kind of stuff. So that's kind of my experience. I'm definitely the normie. That's why I am your humble common nerd. After all, I know the experts to call on when I need expert advice on this stuff. I'm your generalist that can talk really fast about things. So that's kind of my extent with all of this kind of stuff. I love it. It's a lot of fun. I love watching my friends have a good time. I've literally made 3D models and printed them for my friends of their D&D characters. But those systems and stuff like that, that's one of the things I love about it. All of my friends play across all kinds of different systems. I've got tabletop junkies using Castles and Crusades. I've seen other guys. There's my oldest son is really into what was that first alternative to D&D that came out? I'm having a brain fart right now.
Pathfinder.
Pathfinder, yeah. The Pathfinder.
Yeah, it was absolutely not the first. It just had really good publicity.
Okay, like I said. Have you seen the name? Yeah, so that's why I hang out with people like you guys, because you get to educate. I have learned so much doing this job. It's absolutely amazing, and I love that.
I would totally argue that if you play Warhammer 40K, you are not a normie, though. My husband.
Oh well, okay.
My husband.
No, I'm not. I never
Warhammer guy.
Oh no, I'm a normie when it comes to like tabletop RPGs. Like I'm a surface level kind of guy. I know more about it now than I ever have before. I would have never known who Gary Gygax was or his entire history or the fact that like I've screamed the man's name several times now because of all of the insanity going on out there. But so that's kind of my knowledge and experience with all this stuff. So that gives a whole new concept and experience to what you were asking me about earlier today. I thought we were talking about video games. That's why I was even more confused. This makes slightly more sense now.
So
congratulations. I'm arguing all three sides.
Well, not really.
No. I still have my opinion whether this is a video game or a tabletop RPG. Trust me, I still got an opinion on this.
So the whole point was you had to convince him. So I mean, the fact that he like is really starting from baseline definitely means that it's like my whole thing about when you're going for people to try an indie role-playing game, you don't go for the people who already play role-playing games because they're already glued to whatever game it is they like. The largest possible market you have for your game is people who've never touched a role-playing game.
It's actually kind of funny because that's one of my things because I'm developing a game myself. I'm developing a game based on the D30. And one of the things that I've talked about in my development process that I don't understand if other designers don't do is I have friends who, like, for instance, I have a friend who is a housewife with kids who does not know anything about any of this, has never played any of it, has no interest in any of it. And I go and I'm like, hey, read this and tell me if A, you would be concerned with your kids playing it, or B, if you think you could teach them how to do it. I want somebody who has no experience whatsoever to be able to pick up my product, read it, and say, yeah, I can play this, and I understand how it works.
Yeah, I have to. One of the reasons you have to have kind of a specialized editor for role-playing games is that if you get someone who's never played a role-playing game, they're not going to understand why certain things are capitalized. They're not going to understand certain terminology. But I think there's a balance. If your goal is to get people who've never touched a role-playing game versus if you're looking for people who are, so you talked about the D30. The only other game I know that runs on that is Elpengard. But that game is specifically designed for people that have at least some experience with role-playing games. So, but anyway, so I started to say that this actually works really well anyway, because I think one of the basic arguments for the whole 1-1 time thing is that it comes a lot from, it's caught up by people who play a lot of video games, because video games are kind of in that same time thing. So I do want to say hello to the chat real quick, though. I see I am way behind on on messages. So good evening to Legatus. Legatus is one of our mods here. And as you will notice, is so determined to be first on the comments at all times that this came in 7 hours ago. Hanayama-san is here. Hanayama-san, you would probably like him. Also very opinionated. Rio, longtime friend of the channel. Evening Eclectic Goat, hope you are well. I am, thank you very much, and I hope you are also well. The Evil Enigma. Gotta be silent, so cook dinner, but I'm here for you. Excellent, thank you so much. We like lurkers too. Lots of hellos. Some guy called the Common Nerds is in the chat. I don't think I've ever seen him here before. Eraser, who is our super mod. Eraser, thank you very much. Rachel Piercy, also longtime friend of the channel. I don't know if everyone is familiar, but she really desperately needs to move due to her mom's medical issues. So the moving fund is still in full force. If anyone doesn't need a particular cup of coffee one day, it would be great. Pardon me, I'm getting all croupy here. Jacob Ironsides, hello, hello. And Gayo is here. Gayo is one of our channel members. Very good to see you. And I think we have people I actually don't know. So I'm going to go with Lyle because I'm not sure how to pronounce the rest of that. So Lyle, welcome. Original Hamster by popular demand, The Problem. Oh, I do think that Lyle might be the author of the game that I was supposed to review tonight. So, Lyle, I'm really sorry. It's going to come out later this week. Okay. I think the rest are lurkers. So, all right. So, Daniel, you want to start us off by explaining exactly what this 1-to-1 time is?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. This is one of the places where I end up being a hero of the Bro SR because they tend to be jackasses about it in people's chat, but I always end up on their side because most of the people who hate on 1-to-1 time do so from the position of not knowing at all how it works, which is hilarious. It's really pretty simple. All you are doing is tying the game world's calendar to the real calendar. That's it. Basically, the game world itself continues to move one day to one day, thus the 1-to-1, with the real world. And it does have some advantages, and it does have some disadvantages. But here's some things it's not. It is not tracking bathroom breaks. It is not saying that if we spend an hour in combat that we have to spend an hour of real time to make that combat. That's not what it is. Your game time moves at regular pace just like it would in any other game. So for instance, we start an adventure, we do 6 days worth of stuff. Our characters have now advanced 6 days forward in the calendar. And if we play again in 3 days, we can't access those characters because what they've done for those 6 days is already accomplished. So you can't use that character because they're 3 days in the future. Once you get past the day, so let's just say your characters are all on the 10th and now it's the 20th and you're playing, then you can play those characters again. And this is where downtime comes in. Properly adjudicated, the way it was set up in the AD&D handbook and whatnot, this is where I would sit down and say, okay, there's 10 days worth of time that you guys have from the end of your last adventure or whatever when you got back to town and what you've got now. How do you wish to spend these? One of the places that a lot of the extremely militant one-to-one timers come up with that is just stupid is they kind of, it's one of those things that you know for a fact this wasn't the way it worked in, like, say, 1977 or something, because it only functions in a world with the internet and ubiquitous communication, because they act like they're always on. They're jumping in Discord to talk about what they're doing with their downtime. They're reaching out with their downtime reports and stuff to their DMs to explain, oh, wait a minute, my character's on the 10th, so I can start doing stuff again. It's a very ADHD way to do things. I can't stick to one character, and I absolutely need to be able to play for the 5 minutes that I have on my bathroom break. But properly adjudicated, it's there to manage downtime. And it also provides an extra pressure on the players in that classic dungeon crawling, dungeon diving, adventuring, and exploring play style. Because you go into the dungeon and you need to get out of the dungeon before the end of the session, or find some place in the dungeon that you can basically park your characters where if they're there for 3 weeks that we're not playing, they don't just die. Because they're in the middle of it. You can't stop in the middle of a fight. You can't, I've got a week worth of iron rations and I'm down in this dungeon and we're not playing for another 3 weeks after this. My characters are going to starve to death because we're not in a place where we can just use downtime activities and that sort of thing. And so it does put a pressure on finish what you're doing. No, we're not going to pause for the boss fight as a cliffhanger and come back. We need to do it because he's on the other side of the door and we don't want to give him a week to prepare for us. But, so it makes time a bit of a factor. But more than anything else, the reason it was developed and what it's designed to do is game store play, I think, is a very good place to look at one-to-one time in its, I guess you could say, in its natural environment. We got Goat, we got Nerd, we got Lanius, we got Hamster, we got all these people. They all come to the game store, they all want to play, they've all got characters. Well, they're not all there every time there's somebody running a table. And there's multiple game masters. So how do we keep a consistent world with all these different players who may or may not be in a group together this week, who may or may not be doing something? How do we keep this one guy from basically living at the game store and being level 50 while everybody else is level 5? How do we keep that game world consistent for all these players, particularly with multiple game masters? We fix it to the calendar. So that guy who's there every day is going to have to bring in multiple characters because his character is now 4 years in the future, and Nerd comes in with his level 1 character, and he can't use that character. They're in what was colloquially referred to as time jail. I'm in the future. I am time locked from you being able to play me as a character on this day until we catch up. And that's really all it is. It's a management system.
I was about to say, this sounded like something that was literally only created for like the most hardcore version of players out there that are at the game store like every single week and sometimes multiple times in the same week. Like they're equivalent to like a comic shop talk for like the rest of the guys who used to go to the comic shop talk 2 or 3 times a week.
Well, yeah. And it's also like with the internet, it's a little bit different. Because it's easy to be always connected. But it was also because the term campaign, and Goat, you'll appreciate this because I think you and I have kind of the same, I guess you could say, nerdly fascination with etymology and whatnot. But words change in their definition and their use over time. And just like you can't go back in time and say, well, here's words written in 1778, but we're going to apply today's definition to those words as opposed to the words that they actually would have had, the definitions they would have had in 1778. You can't do that in 1976. So these older DMs, like campaign, if you read through the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, campaign does not mean what it means today. Today, when we say campaign, it's almost like narrative. It's a story. This is the story. This is the thing we're playing out. Campaign is almost intrinsically tied to a specific party in the way it's used in the modern terminology. A campaign in 1976 or in the DMG, if you read it, it's kind of what we would call a setting. Your campaign is your world. The campaign is Greyhawk this year. That's the campaign is Greyhawk. Well, Greyhawk has a bunch of GMs running a bunch of groups with a bunch of players in it. And it has to be maintained consistently. And I'm going to praise somebody who is the least praiseworthy individual on the internet. Condor DM actually had one of the biggest backhands to the Bro SR today on 1-to-1 time on a video he dropped. I was like, somewhere in there is somebody who knows what he's talking about. Because he very clearly pointed out that if you read the AD&D handbook, it tells you what's necessary for these campaigns to work is a method of strict timekeeping. He recommends 1-to-1 because it is the easiest for everyone to grasp. But all that is absolutely necessary is some form of strict timekeeping and record keeping to make sure that all the characters playing in this world are playing in the same playing field. And you're not going into a dungeon that my group raided yesterday and finding it all fresh and clean and full of loot. Because we raided it yesterday.
So this is very similar to like the way it is now in modern video games where you have seasons, right? There's an event going on for the year or sometimes 4 months or however long it is. Everybody goes in and, you know, you're not going to get, I mean, it's a little different with the video games now, but yeah, okay, I get what you're saying. So I can understand where some of that because the way everybody does it nowadays, and that's obviously has to do with the way, you know, some of these companies release, you know, programs and that they release their, what is it? Oh, what are the damn things called? I'm having a brain fart now. I hate it when I do that. It's been a long day. But when they release all their little books and all their campaigns and all of that kind of stuff, they're like, well, this is your setting for this year. And
the editions. Like
the editions. Now it's
when GW likes to release a new edition every 2 years.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with Warhammer, we're doing that every couple of years now and stuff like that. And essentially, the edition obviously does change rules, but it's almost more narrative driven, right? Because that's one of the things, especially over the books were pushing the narrative so far in Warhammer 40K. Well, now they're trying to get the game to do it, but they're still wanting to advance the setting at the same time so they can sell more plastic crack. Which, hey, I don't blame them for that. I'm a capitalist too. So that's what they're doing now, and they're tying in the story into the campaigns now, whereas before it used to be, here's your setting, and everybody's just going out there and having the battles, and none of these stories are really connected, and there's random wars going on all over the place. And now it's all much more connected and pushing everything forward.
Also, it's funny.
Hang on just a real sec. Do you want to deal with this thing from Uncle Jamie? It's worth noting that Patreon play is also a thing. I assume it's supposed to be
perfectly honest. I cannot say a lot about patron play because that is one area of play that I've had very little interest in and very little experience with, specifically as patron play.
Do you know
what is that?
I can't really firmly define it for you because, like I said, patron play is something that I've basically brushed aside. I've heard the definition a few times and dismissed it as something I had no interest in. If I remember correctly, I think it has to do with sharing characters, if I'm not mistaken.
Huh.
Or having an ability to do so. But like I said, it's been so long since I bothered to talk about it. It's one of those things that I looked at and I'm like, this is not anything I have interest in, and I can see why it kind of disappeared.
Well, considering that warlocks have patrons, I just assumed that this was like some super NPC high level thing that.
No, it's much more way before warlocks and patrons were a thing in that variety. It's almost like going to the level of kind of like you hear about domain play, where you've actually got characters who are essentially running nations, and needing 6 months to build a keep and that sort of thing. So managing, basically turning yourself into pulling yourself back more into the wargaming aspect and less in the role playing aspect. And it's kind of funny because this whole thing has a lot of horseshoe theory to it. You listen to the hardcore OSR guys, especially when you start getting to the ones who are obsessive about things like one-to-one time. And what's one of their biggest complaints, one of their biggest insults they throw? Well, you just want to play tabletop video game. And I'm like, well, yeah, but the stuff you're pushing essentially is trying to turn it into an older video game, because the thing that one-to-one reminds me the most of is like EverQuest, Dark Age of Camelot, earlier like pre-WoW MMOs, where you would have a dungeon that is only accessible on a server for, say, it only becomes accessible once every 6 hours, and the group that gets to it first clears it out, and then it's dead for another 6 hours. So you got everybody sitting there saying, I have to jump in there and I have to make sure that I'm online at 5:30 p.m. because I've got to get my character into the dungeon. And that character may even, but you take it a step further. The character's locked in that dungeon because it takes 6 hours for them to finish the dungeon, and they're the ones who got the dungeon. End of story. And that's kind of how it functions in with one-to-one play and one-to-one campaign management. So it is a really way more Diablo, hack and slash adventure, old school MMO style play on the macro level as opposed to the micro level, where like
Well,
the 5e and stuff.
I really like Diablo, but I don't think I'd enjoy this. So.
Yeah. Well, I almost look at it as a difference in focus. They want to run a video game on a macro level, whereas the newer players are running a video game on the micro level, where they don't have consequences for characters and they have a reload spawn point every time they die. And everything is about, how they can piece together these pluses and that sword and this other stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, there's a story that I'm paying attention to, but if I decide to do something that should have narrative ramifications, well, it doesn't, because this sword has better pluses. So even though that was my family heirloom, into the trash can it goes, because this is Vorpal. So they're micro video game, whereas these guys are macro video game. We're running our world like an MMO.
You're trying to tell me a bunch of nerds are getting together and splitting hairs over definitions? Who could have ever seen that coming?
Honey Amazon says, so if in one-to-one play you advance the story by 3 weeks, you cannot play those characters again until those 3 weeks have passed, correct? So I assume you'd only ever do that with a random group.
Yeah, that's actually essentially the way it works. Until the calendar catches up, you can't go back to them, because that's what they were doing for those 3 weeks. It's like, oh, I want to play Hanayama-san. Well, you can't. Hanayama-san is currently fighting those orcs. Remember last week he went a week across he traveled a week across the desert and came to the orc tribe and started fighting them. Well, he's busy fighting orcs. He can't be also in town or also going to this dungeon. It does work really well for episodic play. I've said before, and I'm actually doing this right now with my my 3.5e D&D group. I switched them over to Cyberpunk Red, and I'm running Cyberpunk Red. Every one of them has 4 characters each. They all have 4 characters to play. Those characters are pinned to the calendar. And I looked at it and I said, well, what is Cyberpunk Red? This is episodic. It's about missions. The game has plenty of mechanics in it for the 6 weeks that happen between I got this mission and I got that mission, where you're like rolling dice to see how much money you made in your day job. So I'm like, that's essentially a one-to-one style mechanic. Well, and you got your leg blown off. Congratulations. You're not dead because this is cyberpunk world, but you are in the hospital for the next 8 months. Well, while your character's in the hospital for 8 months, you can play some of your other characters. And it works in that fashion because it's episodic. And one of the benefits that you get to that is when I get all my players together, whether it's random players or whether it's my normal group running these characters, they understand that they need to get things done during the session. They can't be in the middle of Militech's hidden secret base where they're developing a new railgun when it's time to shut the game down and go to bed. So
Right.
a lot of the drag in enduring campaigns where players want to gamify things and hang out outside the door and have 4-hour conversations about all the optimal ways to think through, and do we really want to do it this way, and the mulling over, goofing off in town and stuff, trying to find a way to cheese the system. That stuff goes away because they know that if they don't get it done by the end of the session, like let's just say that they don't even get to the mission by the end of the session. Well, unless we're playing tomorrow, you're probably going to have a really pissed off boss.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, it's like, well, what did you do instead of go do the mission? Because guess what? You didn't get to the mission, and Militech delivered its new railgun to its security chief, and they're currently blowing your patron's business to pieces with it.
So what do you do when you have a regular life? I mean, my in-person game runs twice a month max, and most of the time only runs once a month.
Well, the big thing is like I said, it's making sure that you finish what you're doing. Because, let's take the example again. I go into the dungeon, I kill the goblins, keep on the Borderlands, I go to the Cave of Chaos, wipe out the bugbears, come back to the keep. All right, that's perfectly doable within a session. It's designed to be perfectly doable within a normal gaming session. Okay, well, you spent it's a month till we play again. Well, you spent 3 weeks in the caves, going to the caves. I mean, it's one session, but travel time and all that other stuff. You spent 3 weeks, so that goes to that 3 weeks, and it's been 2 months. Okay, so you have 5 weeks of downtime. What did you do with it? Oh, well, you did your gold for XP stuff that was common back then, and you hired your training guy who takes you a week to train you to get to the next level, so you spent a week leveling up, and the wizard had to study spells to add them to their spell book, and that takes 4 or 5 days of spell, so they spent that time and get 4 or 5 chances to add a spell to their spell book, and that's what they spend that time doing. And then they go and they do their next adventure.
I would argue, though, that if you're doing a campaign the way people tend to think of campaigns now, that it doesn't matter if you leave off the game in the middle of the session or not. If you're spending 5 weeks schluffing off in town not doing anything, you're still going to be, the rest of the world is still going to continue, and you're still going to have whoever the big bad is behind the scenes messing with things.
Yeah,
I mean, unless you do nothing but dungeon crawls.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, like I'd said, at the very beginning, what's my favorite game, whatever the best system or game for what I'm doing is. I don't think that, one-to-one time does not work for a single-party narrative campaign. It does work for a world that has that kind of realistic minutia. All right, we look at D&D 5e, or let's look at a classic campaign. You kill the captain of the orcs that are attacking, and you get enough XP to get to your next level. What is necessary for your character to access their new powers? Nothing. You pick up a pencil, you erase the +1 on the character sheet, you put on the +2, and that's it. When you look
to be fair, it has been, I stopped playing D&D for that reason, so long ago that...
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. Go finish.
Well, same thing with the video
you're
game.
Explaining something really well.
Yeah. Same thing with the video game. Ding, I get new stats. Worst thing I got to do is wait till all these enemies are dead so I can click the open stat screen, click, 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 give me my strength and vitality. But if you look at the older systems, going back 2nd edition and even some of the variants in 3rd edition for D&D and in most of those other games, When you level up, you don't just magically get more powerful. It's, well, you have to take the gold back there for that component. You have to hire somebody who can teach you the new stuff. You have to get that higher level character to train that new character up, which actually, if I'm not mistaken, is part of patron play. But you have time requirements. The wizard doesn't just magically get new spells. He has to have 6 months to sit down and write all those new spells into his spell book when he got 5 new spells. So it forces it into a realistic world where everything doesn't just happen one after the other. There's gaps between. Even in a war, like you look at the Napoleonic era, those battles didn't happen one after another. They happened a few times a year. So what did you do in the months between the battles? You marched and you trained and you practiced and you got new horses and you cleaned guns and you manufactured new weapons. Or if you were Napoleon, you ran out of weapons, and that was a big problem in his second attempt. Back when he was like, I need more guns and I need more horses. It's like, well, you can't make horses any faster, Napoleon. When they died, they died.
And this, I can definitely understand why this is advantageous and why it became a thing, because there are a few friends of mine that did some shows that I used to support doing D&D games. And that, I'm not bullshitting you. I sat, because I was modding for this channel, I sat there and watched them spend 2 hours setting up a gag to play on one of the other players. And I was like, this is stupid. This is beyond, which is one of the reasons why I like Wrath and Glory. Because I know enough about the Warhammer 40k setting that you try that nonsense with me and I'm going to pull Necrons out of my behind or have a Chaos portal open up and have a bunch of demons jump out, and we're going to stop this nonsense right here. Because that stuff drives me insane. So I like that, and I've got a buddy of mine. He's big onto XCOM, and he ran a campaign just like what you're talking about for years that involved multiple teams and multiple players, and people would come in and out all the time because it's just like Special Forces. It's just like Warhammer 40k. You've got a mission, you've got certain characters that are meant for that mission, and if you don't want to come back for the next time, cool. We don't ever need to actually see your character again. If we don't have to. And so I can definitely understand why this exists and for something like that, but I can definitely understand why people be like, this is kind of dumb if it's just me and like 3 of my friends playing together every week.
Well, and
especially if it's once a month.
Yeah, especially if it's once a month.
Is following the story of this character.
Mm.
If that's what you're playing, is I am following the story of this character, then this becomes just a colossal pain, or these characters. This just becomes a pain in the butt. And I will say that, like, I'm running it right now in Cyberpunk because I think the episodic, chaotic nature of that game fits extremely well. Some places I think it's really bad is, say, Call of Cthulhu, because I'm in the 1920s, and now my character is in time jail for the 6 months it takes him to fly from New York to, he's like, oh, we got to fly from New York to Cairo, and we have an event there, and then we got to get back to Cairo. And it's like, yeah, that's all one game session, but now my character's locked out for a year because it took 6 months to get there and 6 months to get back because it's 1920 and I don't have jets. But another place, I don't think it is very good for Dungeons and Dragons, even when you are running the large living campaign world style. And I think this is also part of why Gary completely abandoned it and why they abandoned it back in the old days, is it does not lend itself to lengthy, enduring campaigns. One common thing that you will find with a lot of the just hardliners for one-to-one time is that none of them play lengthy campaigns. You don't hear them tell stories about their game that was a 1.5 or 2 year long campaign. I said this to Goat earlier this morning. I said it's a lot like, it's like ADHD play. I get bored too easy to play the same character for a lengthy period of time. I'm bored by this. Well, that's great, because when you run one-to-one time, multiple characters, multiple groups, especially when you start introducing inter-character PvP as a feature instead of a bug, like a big feature, what generally ends up happening with the long enduring campaigns, they start to get out of sync too far out of sync and start to fall apart as the campaign matures. And when you start having characters get locked in 6 and 8 months worth of time jail, that's plenty of time for these people to just completely forget that character. I'm not waiting 6 months to pick my character back up again. Think about it in the classical narrative sense. If you're sitting there and you got a game and you guys played 10 sessions in a row and you're starting to get rolling into the story of that character stuff, and then something comes up and you don't get to play again for like 7 months, what's the likelihood that you guys are going to want to play those characters instead of something new you thought up 3 months ago?
You have to understand that I had to stop streaming games. Like, I was doing game streams Tuesday to Friday, and I do like Diablo on Tuesday and Tainted Grail on Wednesday and Don't Starve on Thursday. I had to stop because I couldn't remember what I was doing or what the controls were because they changed between every game, and that was a week apart. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lyle had a question for you. Is this one-to-one time influenced by an extension of the real-time mechanic like the torch timer in Shadow Dark, expanded to encompass the whole game, or is it a misinterpretation of old rules?
You have got that backwards. The torch timer mechanic, well, first off, the torch timer mechanic is just an expansion of torch timers from the old games. Because, if you look at 3.5 or 2E or 1E or Tunnels and Trolls or any of those old games, it will say, the torch burns for X number of hours. Arcane Library, Kelsey just took that and said, hey, this is a great way to add tension. Let's build our game around the inherent tension of that torch timer, of your torches going out. But I wouldn't put it like that, because torch timers are an in-game thing. You have 5 hours in-game that this torch is going to stay lit. One-to-one time is explicitly for managing out-of-game time. One-to-one does not apply at all when you are sitting at the table rolling dice. Period. End of story. I can cover 2 years in 15 seconds, or I can spend 5 hours figuring out what I'm going to do with 15 seconds of combat when I'm at the table.
Yeah, the closest thing I've ever gotten to one is that, like, if I'm running a convention game, there will be some sort of deadline that says, you have to accomplish this in the next 4 hours because that's the amount of time I have at the convention.
Yeah, but that's also not one-to-one. That's an in-game.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's the closest thing I've got.
Yeah, and that's more like the torch timer, which is also in-game. One-to-one is purely going to be an out-of-game thing. So, for instance, my Cyberpunk Red characters right now, if hold on a second, let me pull it up here, grab my phone, because I keep track of their calendar right here. Let's go to January of 2045. Okay. So you'll see here on January of 2045 on this calendar app. You can't really see the colors and stuff in there, unfortunately. Yeah. But right here on the 25th of January, right there, that is next week, Wednesday, our game. Right now, it's actually the 16th of January in that game. You'll notice that on here, I've got all these different other bars in here, and they're all different colors, even though you can't really see them. Each one of those represents a player's character. They're color-coded. So one player, let's just say he's green. He has a character that's on the 1st of January because it hadn't been played yet. He's got a character that's on Friday the 6th of January because that's the one he played our first game. And she ate up that much time. And he's got a character that's all the way on the 28th of January. So when we play next week on for the 25th of January for that game, that character's in time jail. There's another one that's in time jail all the way till the 3rd of February. So he'll have 10 days from our next game before he's eligible again. Why? Because he decided he needed to get a cyber eye put in or something. I think that's what he's doing. So his butt is in a hospital getting his eyeball ripped out, replaced with a camera. So he's not available next week. But you can see that the game moves across the calendar one day at a time, where the players are jumping way ahead. And if we play before we get to them, we ain't caught up to what you're doing yet.
Man,
So it has no effect there.
yeah, I mean, I think the idea of this is supposed to be that it's easier for the game masters. I would find it a nightmare. I literally run 3 to 4 games with 4 different groups in 4 different genres a month, and like literally, I will sometimes walk into a game when we're first starting and go, "Does this one have perception?" Because I can't remember.
They're not in the same
The,
world either, though. They don't
the
interact.
last, I know, but my point is that like if I started doing that in my games, and I've got to track like 4 players with 3 characters apiece in this game, and what date they're on, and 5 or 6 characters that have 2 characters apiece in this game, I would be so lost.
Well, that's what my calendar's for. On the 25th, which is their 25th, it'll be next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, I'll sit down with that group and I'll pull it out and say, okay, who does everybody want to play? And if he goes, well, I want to play Lottie. So you can't play Lottie. Lottie is busy. She's in the hospital. Oh, well, I guess I'll play this other character.
I just plain old won't be able to remember what they're doing.
Well, it's why you got to keep a notebook. What I would do narratively, like if you're going to run a narrative game, and I do this, as a matter of fact, I'm doing it right now in my Oriental Adventures game that plays every other Sunday. That game is tied to a calendar, but it's not one-to-one time. Essentially, I know the things that are going to happen in the broader world, provided they're not directly influenced by the players, because I know what the political climate that's happening is. And so I've got my lunar calendar pulled out 28 days a month. I got like 3 or 4 months of major events planned out. And the players are in it. And it's like if they say, okay, well, this session we moved 7 days, I pull out my calendar. I write the characters. A party is now on day 28. And I look back and it's like, well, here's the stuff that happened while y'all were out doing whatever you were doing. You come back and there is no town to come back to because the neighboring tribe conquered them 3 weeks ago and burned it to the ground. Because y'all took 3 weeks to goof off in the forest because you decided that, you wanted to take a quote unquote long rest, which I love that when I'm playing a 3.5 game. They're like, can we take a long rest? I'm like, you can take it whatever you want to, but, there's no such mechanic as long rest. It's called days. And you don't get to take more than 1 day in a day. But, it's like, oh, well, we're going to rest all the time. It's like, okay, well, you spent 6 weeks doing something that should have taken you 2, and there's nobody to give you your quest reward because their village got burned down while you were goofing off. Next thing you know, they're not goofing off near as much when they have crap to accomplish.
Well, and that's one of the things that I really like about the mechanic and why I think it could be really advantageous, especially in certain settings, especially when you're dealing with players that are prone to do that kind of stuff. One of the things I was going to ask you earlier was you mentioned like people like getting like with the one-time thing. Is this because I remember a friend of mine mentioned something about this and I wasn't exactly sure what she was talking about. I think it might have been this. Do some players that do this, do they like text their DMs all of the time, like what they're doing and shit, or like what their characters are doing and stuff, right? Yeah. Because I remember she mentioned something like that and I'm like, holy God, yeah, that would drive me insane.
That's almost a straw man. It's
okay.
They do, but not to the extent you're thinking.
Okay.
You do get some of them who are like, yeah, I know my guy is out of time jail on Friday. And he's like, I want to make sure that I'm doing this. So they'll set something up. And you want to talk about the playing jokes on other players and stuff like that? I mean, you do have situations where a character gets back and it's like, what do you mean my entire house got robbed? It's like, oh, because John's character was in town when you left. And as soon as he was done doing the other stuff he was doing, you weren't back yet. So he went and robbed your house. And he told the DM, I rob his house, and he did the rolls and stuff. And it's like, you come back and your house has been trashed. Like, who? What? It's like, yeah, I robbed his house. And I did it in my downtime, and I didn't wait till the session to tell it in front of everybody. I mean, that's a out there example, but I mean, these guys, a lot of them they'll rob their own house. Because they're very strict on the fact that each character, and this is a role-playing thing that's very important, each character is their own character. And while they're both my character, my character A does not give the first crap about my character B. Matter of fact, he might even hate my character B. So he went and poisoned him. Because that's
I
what
could
he
see
would
some
do.
friends of mine having a good time with that.
I had a I was running a convention once, and one of the game masters, and again, it was a convention, so the downtime thing wasn't an issue. But so the first night he ran Top Secret, and he ran everybody through this, very military spy oriented game. And the second night he ran Herb World, which is like a sci-fi X-Files weirdo crazy game where you're chasing aliens. And apparently they got about 3/4 of the way through the game and they're tracking footprints, trying to figure out what's going on. And all of a sudden one of the players was like, "Oh my God, we're tracking ourselves." And they were like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "This is our game from last night. We're tracking ourselves from yesterday." He'd
That's
taken
horrible.
the same, not taken the same world, because Herb World and Top Secret are two very different systems, but he'd taken the same adventure and just put it on two different systems and actually had one team tracking the other. But he didn't tell them, so it worked
Yeah.
out really
And
well.
if you listen to the one-to-one purists, they'll tell you that now they will tell you that this only happens this way, but you just showed how it doesn't only happen in one-to-one time. But they will loudly proclaim from the mountaintop, you only get this kind of interaction with one-to-one time. But you do get that kind of interaction far more often with one-to-one time. Because you will have situations like that where that organically occurs, not just because it was a manipulation of the game master's like, oh, I think this would be cool. I'm going to basically take the adventure they ran last night and I'm going to run it 45 minutes ahead of these characters in a different genre. And they're eventually going to recognize, hey, wait a minute, we're just tracking ourselves. That happens kind of organically a lot with one-to-one timekeeping as they start crossing paths. And I'll give you an example here in my of another thing that happens a lot that develops from it. And in my current Cyberpunk Red game, there was very nearly one character executing another character last session, and the one that was going to get shot didn't even realize it. And that's because these characters were a little out of sync, and one character had picked up some objectives from a megacorp and the other one had picked up some different objectives that kind of ran on the same line, but it was kind of like they both had the same mission, but each one of them had different like bonus objectives.
Hmm.
And the one guy sending me private message, and he's like, "So PvP is like allowed and encouraged, right?" He's like, "Because I think I'm probably going to kill him." He's like, "If he tries to screw this up for me, I'm gonna dome him in the back of the head. I don't care about this guy. That's 2,000 eddies. If he doesn't, if he stops me, I lose 2,000 eddies. So there's a good chance that at the end of the, as we get towards the end of this mission, that right after we kill the target, he's going to be the next target." It's like, because I'm not letting him run off with this thing that I need to destroy.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
that kind of thing. And that actually came up in that session, but it could have just as easily come up because he runs across a character he played 2 sessions ago. So these two have never met, but they're coming from different angles, and we're going to walk on the same path together for a short distance, but then we're going to Y off again. And who rolls the better initiative and who has the bigger gun?
Hmm.
Next thing you know, you got a net runner who just gets unplugged while he's in the net. His brain gets fried.
Literally. I love the cyberpunk world too. I love that you're playing those games.
Um, since this does tend to show up for D&D a lot, I do want to go over this. Well, if I can make it work, there we go. So I want to talk about this a little bit. I'm not sure people are going to be able to read it terribly well, but we're going to try anyway. Question I've been asked several times. Oops, I need to give a credit here. The Ginger's Guide to Running 5e Using a Real-Time Calendar. Question I've been asked several times is how I managed to run a game with one-to-one timekeeping using 5e, so I'm taking the time now to answer this. Some people are going to see the title and immediately start typing, "Why are you still playing 5e? Play X instead." I get it. I've tried and played with many systems, and the truth is that while many players don't want to learn a new system to play, the tools for running a game that follows a real-time calendar are already in 5e if you know where to look. Most things in this article are adaptations of already existing rules in the DMG, with some rules I've modified stuck in too. This guide assumes 2014 5e, and parts of it may not be applicable to the 2024 edition, but most should still apply. I keep forgetting 2024 even exists.
Yeah, trust me. Wizards of the Coast is trying to get everybody to forget it too.
It's totally backwards compatible, but some stuff doesn't work.
First, I want to go over what one-to-one time actually is for anyone not in the know. Running a game with one-to-one timekeeping means syncing your in-game calendar up with the real-world calendar and keeping records of what every player character is doing when. You know, I just had a thought, and I don't want you to answer this right now, but I'll forget if I don't. What do you do if your players are in different parts of the world? Um, if it's
Time
January,
zones.
if it's January in the real world,
time zones.
then it's January or equivalent in the game world. I was actually thinking more temperature. Like, I have a friend I talk to in Australia a lot, and I'll be complaining about the fact that, you know, it's 20 below, and he's complaining about the fact that it's 86 degrees.
How realistic do you want your world to be?
Huh?
How realistic
That's
do
right.
you want your world to be?
Yep.
Well, I'm just thinking that, like, you know, syncing up the calendar may not look the same for everyone involved. That's kind of what I was thinking of. Running this way turns time into a resource that players must manage. It's near essential if you're running a campaign world with multiple adventuring parties, but still has benefits even with a single party. I've gone over many of the benefits and pitfalls of running this way in past Twitter posts, which I will link below. Using one-to-one time doesn't mean that you never pause a game mid-dungeon, but it does mean you need to track time that goes by per adventure. If a party takes 2 weeks in-game to travel to a dungeon, delve into it, and travel back, but it takes you 3 weeks in the real world to cover this part of the adventure, when they return, they'll have a week of downtime to catch up with the real-time calendar. If conversely, it only takes you 1 week to run the 2-week adventure, then the party will be locked or time jailed upon returning until the real-time calendar catches up. If this happens, the players can play other characters for a few sessions until their time-locked characters are free to adventure again. Player arbitration. In smaller campaign with a handful of players and the GM, it's reasonable to expect the DM to arbitrate downtime. If the group expands to multiple adventuring parties with 10 plus players, you may deputize a few players to help arbitrate downtime activities as well. This will mean that players may do any required roles for their downtime activities together without the need of the GM to arbitrate. The players, of course, may still come to the DM with downtime if they want their orders to be kept secret. Secret chats. Even if you don't run online, secret game chats with every player will help you keep a record of downtime activities. It's helpful if this is separate from your normal DMs with that player and easily searchable. It will allow them to operate with a fog of war so the other players may not know the crimes they're up to. Downtime quests. Sometimes you may give players quest leads or curiosities to investigate during their downtime. This isn't necessarily required, but can give the group some direction when they are in between big adventures. Downtime complication tables work well for this. Game flow. Beginning of the session. I should have looked to see how long this was. Beginning of session. You may take time before the session begins to adjudicate any remaining downtime that wasn't taken care of either at the end of the last session or in between sessions. Usually you don't want to spend a lot of time on it here and get to the game, so be careful not to overdo it. Sometime at the beginning of a game session, players are not sure what to do since they will normally begin in a town. If you paused at the end of the last game and they are in the middle of an adventure or dungeon, there should be no downtime here and they should just start the game. However, if they did have downtime, an effective way to open the session is to ask them as their characters gather if there's anything they'd like to share from their downtime. If you gave a few of them downtime quests or information, this is a good time for it to come out, though they may not share at all depending on their preferences for secrecy. I also find myself saying, well, what do you do for downtime if they are stuck in the dungeon?
That's one of the core breaks there. Traditionally, you would pick it up there. They're still in the dungeon. Heck, they may have another party run into them while they're in the dungeon. But that's one of the breaks. If you ask one-to-one time militant, he'll tell you that you're dying in the dungeon. Or you better have found a place you can be safe in the dungeon where you can have dungeon downtime because you found the clan of dwarves or whatever you hung out with for a week. Others will say, no, we're going to pick it up right back here, and you have to finish that adventure for us to put you back on the calendar and figure out where you're at and adjudicate downtime, which is what Harmony is saying to do here. And with one party, that is a functional solution. But when you have multiple parties, that becomes untenable because now you have a party that's functionally able to go back in time to finish what they were doing.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing just seems...
You're starting to see where it breaks when you start having longer campaigns with more players and more people get moved into different positions on the calendar. It works for 5-6 months. But as you get longer and longer, it becomes more and more stuff to manage.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, is that, like, especially since we play so rarely, I have a group that's been playing for 2 years, and they'd have to have a ridiculous number of different characters in the same campaign at this point. And they're based out of a school, so I guess that wouldn't be hard. You just make them a bunch of different students and they go out, they get sent out on different things for different classes. But man, trying to track that for 2 years is like, it just, filters outward.
Yeah, this definitely seems like something that for that kind of situation, you couldn't run it for very long. Like I said, like when I was talking about earlier, that like the way they do the video game, like seasons and stuff like this. Like I think something like this would be really cool if you had like a really big tabletop RPG store to where you had people coming in all the time and wanting to do something like this. It's like, hey, every 4 months, come check out the new game we're playing. Oh, you got bored with the last one? Well, come check it out. We're doing another one in 4 months, and everybody can play their own little I could see it being worthwhile for something like that. But yeah, you start trying to do something like that for a year, you're gonna have 5 million characters, and I know people that are experts with spreadsheets, but even they wouldn't want to not deal with that kind of nonsense.
And you'll hear them talk. And it's like, why are you playing the same campaign for 6 months? You bring your campaign to an end. There's some of them that will openly mock the idea of why would you ever want a long campaign. And we'll tell you that you're playing wrong if that's your goal. Ironically, they'll have friends that say the opposite and will somehow try and tell you that one-to-one will allow you to have a more stable long-term campaign. But
I think it would really have to depend on the game. I mean,
yep. It does, but, some of them are the loudest and most vocal and most militant one-to-one people are also vocal and militant that there is one specific game that is worth playing, that is one specific way and one specific rule set and one specific interpretation that is objectively correct.
See, and I was going to ask about...
despite the fact that they actually disagree with each other depending on which week you're talking to them.
Yeah, this like Eclectic Goat was bringing this up to me, and she said, this was like this. There was kind of like this stink over this and everything else, and people are arguing. And I'm like, this is literally like the most hardcore of hardcore nerds that are arguing and making something out of this, because like everybody else understands. Everybody else would kind of look at this and go, well, yeah, I could see why that would work for certain sessions and certain things. But like, this is one of those people where they believe it's ego and narcissism and pride, right? These people believe that their version and their way is the absolute best, and everyone else should have to comply to the way they think it should be done. And anybody else is wrong or stupid or evil or, whatever colloquial stupid term they want to use at the time because they're mad about it, somebody disagreeing with them, right? Like you see this on the internet all the time nowadays. And it's just like, y'all, can everybody just chill?
I have to say, listening to this does make me feel kind of stupid because I don't think I could do it.
I think
it's important to separate the mechanic away from, just like anything else, to separate the idea away from its most obnoxious adherence. Because that's one of the problems you have here is if you equate it to the most obnoxious people preaching about it, of course it's bad. It really is. It's one of those things that's simple that gets out of hand quickly because it's so simple. Mm-hmm. Just like having I'm trying to, I'm at a loss for an analogy, which is strange for me. It's one of those things that it's like, it works really well until you start adding so many threads into it that it gets out of hand because now it's too simple to handle the complexity of what you put into it. That makes sense.
It's like television. No, it is. It's like television shows because like that's one of the big complaints you hear is like, well, they introduced all these characters and nobody got enough screen time. Right? It's the same thing. At some point, you just have way too many people to deal with and not enough time to concentrate on things and actually move the story forward properly. Because at the end of the day, aren't we all just here for a good story and a fun time?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I kind of want to address this comment by Mad Norseman. So
I like that.
Gauntlets are games where you just take a bunch of throwaway characters and you basically put them through a meat grinder just as a fun see who lives kind of thing. And you don't care about any individual character because that's not the point. And it feels to me like this could just turn into, like, why do you have attachments to one character when you're playing 6 of them? It seems like there would be, especially if you had a longer campaign, there's a lot less stakes for each individual character if you're playing a bunch of them. What do we think about that?
I think that hits the nail pretty squarely. And once again, you go back to the people who are the most visible adherents, even if you go to the ones who are not the most obnoxious. That is in a lot of cases, it's a feature, not a bug. I don't care as much about my individual characters. They're all just what I'm playing today. It's like I said, very ADHD, very in the moment.
Yeah.
Very what's happening right now type deal. And it does give you an ability to jump around and experience a bunch of stuff. But you want to talk about not caring, there's literally documented cases of them killing their own characters. Like my paladin smited my assassin. My assassin killed my fighter who has his own domain and has gotten to the level where he has his own castle. But my assassin killed him. It's like, how much more is it? I don't care about my character that I got to the very top and then I killed myself.
Yeah, see, that's why it's one of them situations where I could see this working well for certain situations, but like the model thing that I was talking about with my friend earlier, like she's kept this she's put a lot of work into this character. You know what I mean? This is a character that she loves. There's no way she would ever just toss it away or throw it away like that. So it's like, I think it's one of them situations where it's like, yeah, I can see why people love this. And hey, you know what? If that's the only way you want to play, by all means, have at it. It's your life. Do it your way. The old man gave you free will for a reason. But like, it's just like anything else. The guys that go to extremes and think there's only one way to do things, it's like at the end of the day, you just kind of have to walk away because they just end up ruining the fun for everybody. Because y'all like, look, I get it, but dude, it's not going to be for everybody.
No.
So Uncle Jamie should have volunteered to be our pro guy. The stink is only from very strongly anti one-to-one time people. Their dislike is largely proportionate to the situation. The bros can be too jargony and defensive at times, though, I guess.
I would actually disagree with that. The stink from the strongly anti one-to-one time people is generally the stink of them not bothering to know first, not bothering to actually understand how it works. I said at the beginning of this podcast, I almost always end up being on the bros side in streams and stuff that pop up about 1-to-1 time, because the comments get filled with modern players who do not understand it, and they devolve into the complete idiocy of like, well, I guess we got to track bathroom breaks now. And you think that's
They
a joke,
take it
but
to
that's
the
literally what
extreme.
they go to is, well, I guess we got to track how long I was on the toilet because we're 1-to-1 time. Completely unable to understand that it does not exist in the game and that's not how it functions. But that's what they'll pin everything on to show how stupid it is, and that is quite annoying. But the bros have an almost religious obsession with trying to drag TTRPGs back into being war games. That's really kind of what it is. They want to cram it back into essentially being a war game on an
Uh-oh. Did he freeze? Was that
Uh-oh.
me?
it's abandoned
Oh,
before
that was
AD&D
okay.
even came out. You
You
know,
done skipped
You'll
for
have
a
to say
second.
that last 10 seconds again.
like they try to cram it back into being a war game. Which, if you look at the history, that was a concept that was abandoned before AD&D even came out. Like Gary had moved on. Gary and Dave both had moved on from D&D as a war game with a microscope, where instead of a unit, we're looking at a single soldier. That was pretty much gone by the time AD&D was being created. And really, when you start getting into like, what is it, blue or red, whichever basic edition it was like the third set of basic after white box and all that stuff. The wargaming, the miniature wargaming fantastical role playing had been abandoned for just the fantastical role playing very early on, and they seem trying to cram even just AD&D back into wargaming, and
Oh, there it goes again.
Oh, no, he did it again.
turn around and tell you, well, I am playing war games. D&D's a war game.
So Uncle Jamie says war games are awesome, though. They are awesome. My Lord Lucifer, my Lord Gucifer is a massive war gamer. But if I want to play a role playing game, I don't want to play a war game. Otherwise, I'd be playing a war game.
Demolition derbies and classic car rallies are both very, very awesome ways to drive your vehicle. However, if you show up in your vintage Ferrari for the classic rally and I ram you in an 86 Cutlass four-door, you're going to be pissed.
That's true. That's
Well,
true.
I was thinking like, if I feel like playing Cards Against Humanity and you haul out, Zombicide, they're both games and people like both of them and they're both popular, but if I want one, I don't want the other.
Yeah. And well, even
that's
more so, if you tell me that I'm coming over to play Cards Against Humanity and I see the What Would Jesus Do board game on the table, we're probably going to have a bit of an issue here.
Well, it depends on if it's the version where you get to flip tables and whip money changers or not, because I'm actually kind of okay with both. So, but yeah, no, and it's one of those situations. That's like, I love Warhammer, right? But I haven't even learned how to do the proper play the proper tabletop game, because it's like it can take up to 4 or 5 hours to play, especially if you don't know it very well. And it's one of the things like I'd much rather learn some of the other versions because of that. Right. Look, I got 6 kids. Okay. Like I've only got so much time in the evening to be able to do things.
This is why we only play once a month, because they show up at 10 o'clock in the morning and we play until 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Well, and trust me, I do 24-hour streams. Like I've totally done stuff. Like I have friends of mine that we can't get on the phone together because we'll end up being on the phone for 6 hours. So I totally get it. But yeah, I mean, that's one of those
that
things.
That is a common attitude though these days, though, especially from people that have never played. They're like, how long is this going to be? Couple hours? And I'm like, block out some time there, honey.
Yep. Like,
I do want to cover this next little bit because
yeah,
this seems less intense than kind of some of what you were talking about before. End of session. If players end in town, you can go ahead and calculate their experience for the session or adventure, and then take 10 to 15 minutes to adjudicate downtime actions now. You can send some of them information privately this time or after. Pausing the game. Some sessions may not be suitable for downtime. The players may end in a dungeon or other dangerous place. In this case, it's generally okay to pause at the end of the session and pick up where you left off next time without dealing with downtime orders between games. See, that seems much more doable to me than
But look at who
the.
she's talking to.
Sorry, say again?
That's it. But look at who she's talking to in the article. This is specifically for 5e players being introduced to running a strict calendar with their game. And that is actually probably closer to what AD&D's description of one-to-one time actually tells you to do. And it's for what very limited strict timekeeping that Gary did, it's probably closer to what he did. And it definitely is what you should do anytime you're running a single group. That does cause issues when you start bringing in other players, other characters, multiple groups, and multiple DMs. Because are these other DMs who are also playing in this campaign world, how are you going to pause this one set while these other DMs have to rely on the strictly kept calendar to maintain the consistency of the world? But again, this is why it gets to 5, 6, 8 months and it starts falling apart at the seams. You got too much shit in the bag.
Well, and the thing is that and again, I'm middle-aged and I have a life and I have a ridiculously busy schedule. But the concept of not only running frequently enough for this to happen, but running multiple groups frequently enough for this to happen or need to happen blows my mind. I mean, when I was in elementary school, I didn't have this much time.
Well, like I said, it seems like something like this would work if you owned a D&D store, right? And you had the time to manage something like this. I can't imagine any individual person doing this for fun, but I guess I'm wrong.
Well, it does. The reason this came up is that the comment I saw this morning was that, what were they saying? They were saying that the only people who wouldn't like this were people who wanted to monetize gaming. And I was very confused by that because I could only think professional GMs are the only people I could think who would do this. Because professional GMs have the time, they run the same adventure consistently.
Yeah.
They might have players who are in one week and out another week. Like that was the only regular GM I could think of that would find this really useful.
I think he looked at it from a different perspective and just didn't state it very well, because in his first when I replied and his first comment back to me kind of shed a little bit more light on that. I think he was kind of looking at it from a couple of different perspectives, one of which being the professional live streamer game crowd, because one-to-one time would certainly not make it easy to follow your live stream game.
No, that would be a horrible way to do it.
Well, I mean, live stream games are terrible anyway. They're absolute garbage.
I was trying to find a nicer way to say that, but yes.
Because nobody wants to watch you play D&D.
I have to completely and totally disagree with you on that one. There's a lot of money in watching people play, or there's a lot of money in having people watch people play D&D.
There's a lot of money and a lot of people who sign on to watch people pretend to play D&D. Because on the streams that are super successful, it is not actual play the way you would ever play at your table. It is set up to create an entertainment product. Now,
depends on the group.
So you can't do that with one-to-one time because you have a mechanic that is functionally disrupting that easy narrative flow that people need to follow for an entertainment product, to follow something that's serialized. And like I said, its strength is way more in episodic play than it is in serialized play. But I think what he was also getting at, because he had mentioned he's like, you are kind of in the group of the people who monetize, outrage over one-to-one. And I was like, well, of all the stuff the bros talk about, 1-to-one's probably the one I have the least problem with and the one that I've thrown the least shade on. But the most successful thing on my channel is me mocking overreactions to tabletop role playing game stuff. And the bros feature on that frequently because their entire shtick is overreacting and overstating stuff about gaming. So they're essentially a content farm. But and I disagree with them, which means that I constantly get to bash on them. But when he says, "Oh, if so and so is going to jump on stream and spend 2 hours just going off on how stupid 1-to-one time is," he's monetizing people who think 1-to-one time is stupid because they're all going to jump in the comments and throw their super chat so they can say, "Yeah, it's stupid, man. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Here's $2 to hear you tell me another way that I think it's stupid." So I think that's what he was kind of thinking about when he said people monetizing it, because it's like, hey, we're going to do a stream on why the Bro SR sucks. If you hate the Bro SR, come super chat for me.
Well, but
Yeah,
that's like
and everything.
that's like saying everything on YouTube is monetized automatically now. So
Pretty much.
I
I don't think he stated it very well.
yeah, I actually tried to get back to that conversation after I saw it when I decided I really wanted to do this. And I couldn't find it, so I probably missed some of the back and forth that happened afterwards. But I I did find it really interesting that there were so many people that jumped in about, there was one person who said there are two outlooks on 1-to-one. One is the people who like it, and they're the people who've thought about it, and one is people who don't like it, and those are the people who just don't think about it. And I said, well, great. If you feel that way, you should come on the show. And he's like, no.
Yep. Here, actually, I got the comment that he said to me, because he had he said his thing, and he asked if he was wrong, and I said yes, he is. But he popped in and he said, he goes, "You're probably the one person who responded to him," he means, "that might actually qualify as one of the loud critics inferred. You do semi quote unquote make a living off of shouting it down, or at least those that promote the style." And he goes, and then he said he was genuinely curious about how I said it was, basically built for ADHD tables. And Mike Sauce, by the way, he is constantly supportive of my channel, and I was on stream with him the other night.
I would love to have had him on too, but unfortunately he is not reachable through Twitter because he's got everything blocked off. So
you should have just asked me. I would have reached out to him.
Well, no, I didn't know.
He's also Pacific time zone, so he's like just getting off work right now. When I was on stream with him the other day, the stream started at 10:30 my time.
Yeah, trying to keep track of it. See, there's another thing. I can't even keep track of like regular time zones on a Monday night when I stream every time.
Oh, I can fix that for you, Goat. I want you to roll back to your bookshelf. I know you have quite an expansive one. Pick any fantasy novel and pull it off. And open it up and find me the part where the heroes in your adventure are concerned with time zones even when they're flying all the way across the planet.
I was thinking like in real life. My brother has lived in California for 12 years, and I still can't do the math to figure out when I can call him safely. Actually, I'm better at the UK times. That's like the only one I know off the top of my head because so many people who come on the show are from
GMT 6.
They're 5 hours ahead, except during that period where they screw up turning their clocks, and then they're 4 hours. That is the only one I know. But France is different. France is different. Yeah. I remember that. I just don't remember what it is.
Of course, France is different. Surrender 30 every hour. Did you? I just had this kind of a thought. 1-to-one would probably be extraordinarily interesting if you wanted to run a game set on Pern. If you're familiar with the novels.
I am. I'm just curious what the...
Well, 90% of Dragon Riders of Pern, at least the early novels, is all about them hopping all over time and their dragons.
Somebody did ask earlier about like if you had a game where uh, time travel was a thing.
Yeah.
They thought
Well, I
one
mean,
to
D
one
and
would
D
not.
is time travel's a thing in D&D. You can time travel.
I'll say you can time travel in Warhammer 40K too. That stuff happens all the time. Hell, the warp, that's one of the whole problems with the dating system is inside of the warp, time doesn't operate the same way in real space. So sometimes if you do a lot of warp travel, you might technically be 100 years old, but it might only look 30. So yeah, there's all kinds of fun ways with that.
Which I would say
So
that
Which you're
D
gonna
and
play
one to one
with.
time is a very, very D&D centric thing. Even though I think there's other game styles that it actually works far better for than D&D, it is not even just a D&D centric. It's a very OSR D&D centric gaming style.
so what would you do? How do you do one to one if you've got I'm trying to visualize this.
Yes,
So
that's exactly right.
it feels like there'd be so much math involved.
Well, there's math. It's just really easy. I want to go 10 days back in time. I just subtract 10 days from where your character is. And I go back and I look at my notes and I see what was going on at that 10 days. Oh, look, I caught my other character robbing my house.
Right, but what I'm saying is that okay, so you have left the dungeon, you get home, you discover your house has been broken into, you spend 2 weeks learning a martial arts skill, and then you go back in time 2 weeks. Do you still
All
have
right.
the martial arts skill?
Well, yeah.
Or does your other are you now in two places in the same timeline?
Well, now the paradox thing, I'm not. That's one of the interesting ones. There's the place where you're really going to break it. Now, I would say that you time traveling back. Of course, you have your stuff, just like the wizard has all his spells when he time travels back. Now, when you time travel back and you punch yourself in the face, now we have a situation. Like, how are we going to adjudicate you going back and kicking your old self in the nuts? Because that wasn't in the original breakdown, and now we got to change everybody else's stuff too. I mean, I'm using a ridiculous example, but I could go back and screw up what my own group did in the adventure, and now we have to go reposition or adjudicate the timeline for all the characters who were involved and affected tangentially down the road.
I
It's
was
a
a big
good thing.
fan of the butterfly effect, so that's why
Yeah. It's a good thing that the campaigns never last
Good
long
movie.
enough for wizards to be able to develop time travel spells.
Kill them off before it happens. Good idea.
Speaking as a very old GM, the rulebooks for Advanced D&D, Gamma World, Top Secret, and Traveler all allowed time travel, but basically said you've got to make your own rules. Good luck. Griffin's View, I just want to let you know that next week, Mark Miller is on this show, and you can ask him.
Well, yeah, Griffin's a real good friend of mine. He's one of my co-hosts on a couple of the shows. I told him I was on here because this is right up his alley. He's one of those guys that's been doing this stuff for like 20 and 30 years. So I knew he'd be in for something like this.
Mark Miller wrote Traveler, and he, Scott Robinson, and Jeff D. So Scott Robinson wrote Bunnies and Burrows, which was like the first game ever to have like non-humanoid characters. And Jeff D wrote one of the first superhero games ever put out. They all wrote in the 70s. So they're all going to come talk about non-D&D gaming history next week. So
That's so... Oh, I might have to tune in for that. That sounds like a blast.
yeah, I
was... Holy cow, you got some legends in there.
Well, the thing is, I messaged all three of them figuring like if one of them says yes, then I'll have a great interview. And all three of them said yes. And I about had a heart attack.
You're probably not going to have to do anything on that stream. You're probably just going to just sit back and just listen to them tell stories to each other and like jump in on it every once in a while. Like that's probably going to be the easiest one ever.
I suspect the chat is gonna jump in on that.
Oh, they're going to have a blast. That's
There's
so
probably
cool.
a flood of questions, but But yeah, so if you want to know about time travel rules, you can ask him. You can ask him yourself.
There you go.
Uncle Jamie seems to think that one-to-one time avoids paradox and not create new ones. You're using a one-to-one time to avoid paradox, not create new ones. Unfortunately, logic dictates that you do create new ones. That's
I mean,
actually why they fall apart. Is they do eventually become paradoxical, as all the players have multiple characters in different places on the calendar.
Everybody starts killing each other.
You essentially have to ensure your players don't have truly world changing effects, unless it's to the point where they're using the world to fight each other.
yeah. Griffin's view, considering that we're going to be talking about first edition Traveler, and you could die during character generation in first edition Traveler. That could take a while.
I think that's his point. Is let's just talk about a gauntlet character. Let's just see who can get the furthest through it.
I mean, if everybody wrote a Traveler character,
That's what I'm saying.
I understand. I think it takes quite a while. The only time I've ever played Traveler, it's come with pre-gens. So
It's been a long time since I've played or fooled around with Traveler at all. But if I'm not mistaken, a big part of the whole you can die during character creation in Traveler is almost like a greed mechanic, because it's like you're rolling different segments of your character's life leading up to when they're joining the crew or joining the game. And it's just simply the older your character gets, numerically the greater chance that something happened that killed them. So each time you're trading another chance to die for more skills, more abilities, more stuff from your past. So you could literally just like roll up a 15-year-old and you'd be okay 9 times out of 10. But when you want to get a guy who already has some cool stuff and has been in the military and been a trader and been a freighter captain, then you're mad because at 50 he wrecked his freighter right before you were wanting to start the game.
well, I mean, even if you wanted to do, or like early 20s seems quite realistic, but there's still a chance that they could have gone in the military and been killed.
True.
So.
I mean, there's a chance.
That's very true.
A chance instead of 6 chances.
Yeah. And then you have Paranoia, where you also could once upon a time die in.
That's cool.
I think Trap Chest is correct. If I'm not mistaken, in the current version of Traveler, you can. They've just pared it way down.
Yeah, it's way less likely.
Like I think you could, and I'm saying this as a joke, but it may actually be true. I think you could die in childbirth in the original Traveler.
I mean, if you were being realistic enough, that would make sense. Yeah, it's been a really long time since I played Traveler. I have a friend coming to run this coming Saturday, so I can kind of refresh my brain for that. But
You're talking real Traveler, not Mongoose Traveler.
yeah, Mongoose is, yeah, it's kind of like Paranoia, Again, really like the original. I mean, I don't mind the system for the current Paranoia, but man, it started taking itself way too seriously. Which seems weird for a game called Paranoia. Yes, it was possible to die in childbirth.
Yep.
Birth and Traveler happened to be once.
That's what I was laughing at. Yeah. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Daniel. Totally.
It's like, oh no, I went to roll my character and the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck in a rural hospital. I'm screwed.
Oh god.
All right, so final thoughts on one-to-one time, and then we'll start wrapping up.
I mean, honestly, it's one of those situations where I think this is a great mechanic and has a lot of uses for very specific instances, right? Or if you've got a group of people that want to play in a very specific style, you know what I mean? But this certainly isn't something that is applicable to everything, and is certainly not even applicable, I think, to the majority of games, especially the way they're played nowadays. Back in the day when everybody was going to the store on the weekly basis and you had game stores all over the place and stuff like that, I think something like this makes total sense. Be able to do things like that and be able to have people come in and out and keep the narrative going and have everybody feel like a giant. Because I think one of the things that I don't think we really brought up at all during this, but I think one of the aspects about this that I do really like is it makes everybody feel engaged in the overarching story, right? So you get more of that group mentality, you get more of that bonding with people because they're all playing in the same world. So even if you're not playing in the same game, even if you're not playing in the same group, you're still going to know about events that are going on in the world, and you guys can talk to each other and relate to each other that way. So for building like an overall, the way we like to call it, fellowship kind of group of people, if you know, attached to an area or attached to a store, I think something like that would be great for a situation like that, you know, to utilize it like that. But as far as like, just like anything else, anybody that wants to be too hardcore about anything in particular and go, this is the only way to do it. Look, I disagree with some of my fellow Christian brothers and sisters out there, because some of them are like, this is the only, I'm like, that's not even what the book says. But like, that's the same thing. Anytime you get like that with an extreme and people tell you that there's only one way to do it. Well, first off, if you ever run across somebody that you're trying to talk, it's something you're interested in, and they tell you there's only one way to play something, you should probably walk away and find somebody else to talk to about whatever you're getting interested in, because that's not the kind of person you want to deal with, because their egos, their narcissism, and it's just not going to end up playing well. And they're going to ruin the fun for everybody because they are too anal retentive. So I think it's a great concept. I'm glad I got to learn about what it was. I had no idea what this was prior to you guys bringing this up. I didn't even know this was a thing that existed. I love the concept, but definitely not something I'd exactly be interested in playing in personally myself.
I don't know why, but when you said that about the only way to play, I saw a post once from Uno, the card game. People who make the card game,
Yeah.
and they said, just so you know, you cannot play a draw two on top of another draw two. And the first comment was somebody said, "Thanks for the cards. We'll take it from here."
Exactly. And then, okay, so in all of the discussions that have been around some of the stupid changes that WotC's made to D&D and stuff like that, right? What do a lot of people like to default back to? It's my damn table, and I can play with whatever rules I want. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it's the GM's table. It's the DM's table. And, you know, disregard, I mean, hell, even the books tell you at the end of the day, the goal is for everybody to have a good time. Don't be a stickler about exactly what is in this book, because at the end of the day, the goal is for everybody to have fun. Right? So
Yeah,
it's like, that's,
if you've changed the game to it being something entirely different, well, then just go play a different game. But when you get all these
course.
optional rules and, you know, side like encumbrance, like, yeah, there are people that are sticklers about encumbrance. And then there are people like me who say, as long as you're not being ridiculous about it, I'm not going to count encumbrance. The minute you start trying to do something really stupid, I'm going to start counting numbers, and then you're going to be real upset.
yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's just what it ends up coming down to, is everybody, yeah. This is always going to happen in any fandom. I delve into a lot of them. There are hardcore folks, and like, ask anime, like, listen to the fight over sub and versus dub in anime. Like, man, you talk about some people that'll go throw down on stuff like that. So it's always going to happen. It doesn't surprise me that this turned into a bit of a thing with some folks and that people got heated over it. Welcome to Nerds. We're passionate about things, and we always will be. You know what I mean? And we're going to get into arguments. We're going to get into fights. I mean, that's just how things go. But at the end of the day, we all need to remember that we all love this. Like, we love tabletop RPGs in this particular case, right? We love role playing. We enjoy doing this stuff. And that's what we all need to end up concentrating at the end of the day, and just pull the stick out of your butt, guys. It's not just, yeah, there you go. Like, what was your rule earlier?
Rule
Don't
number
be a
one,
dick, right?
don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick, man.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a tool. We call them mechanics for a reason. It's a mechanism to affect something, to effectuate something at the table. And the simple fact of the matter is that, you know, tools tend to be good at what they're doing. And if one-to-one time is a nail gun, there are going to be certain circumstances where I'm driving nails into a stud and it does an extremely good job at that. And then there's going to be other times where I'm hemming pants and it's not the best tool for that. It's actually quite terrible for it. And that is where the major problem comes in, is that you've got certain people out there who seem to think that the nail gun is the greatest thing ever. And anytime you want to put two things together, you should always use a nail gun. But it's like anything else. It is a tool, and properly utilized, it has a lot of benefits. But understanding what those benefits are and what they effectuate is important. And when you come to tabletop games, which are an immersive experience, like I don't use minis. I'm a pure theater of the mind guy. And there's a reason for that. And that's because I believe that any mechanic is going to break immersion to some extent. I don't want to roll dice unless it's something that's really necessary. I don't want to have anything else that interferes with that immersion. And that means excluding unnecessary mechanics or mechanics that don't bring in a benefit. Because every single mechanic, no matter what it is, brings in a drawback. So you don't just have to break even for me. I need you to do something for me to make up for that drawback for me to bring it in. And that's kind of where I land for the most part on one-to-one time. I'm looking at where its benefits are going to outweigh its drawbacks, and that's when I'm going to use it. That's the problem with, well, really any of this stuff. And I do think that there is a mentality that it comes from the OSR. The OSR has they almost have an obsession with anything that existed in the old books and doesn't exist in the new ones. So they'll go back and they'll find something and they'll say, well, this got discarded. It's not in the new stuff. So therefore it must be great because the old is great. And sometimes you find a bottle of wine that's been laid up and is mellowed out and is exceptional. And sometimes you find a bottle of rot gut that was destined for the drain and just didn't make it there. And it got tossed in the throw this away later bin, and you're digging through the trash saying you found a treasure. But the obsession is the old way had to be better. So if it was good enough for Gary to put it in the book, it must be the best thing ever. It's like, no, Gary made mistakes and took stuff out of the books himself.
Yeah, different editions existed for a reason.
They did. And, the closest thing we have to second edition as Gary Gygax was going to put it together is Castles and Crusades. If I'm not mistaken, he had a very big hand in the development of that and essentially based it off of what he had originally started as second edition Dungeons and Dragons, AD&D. And last time I checked, there's no one-to-one timekeeping section or even strict timekeeping section at all in the Castles and Crusades books.
Yeah, I laugh every time I laugh every time I see Dungeon Crawl Classics being referred to as like the first epitome of the OSR, and I was like, I'm pretty sure Troll Lord Games has that sewn up.
Yeah, pretty much. It really does. Because let's face it, the true genesis of the OSR was when Wizards of the Coast put out the OGL, and a bunch of people started printing copies of the old TSR games that they loved, that TSR would have sued them under the dirt for even looking at like they were going to print.
Thank you very much to Lost Lore Scholar. Couldn't sleep, do the baby. Dropped in to give you some support. God bless. Thank you so much. I'm sorry your baby's giving you a hard time, but
It happens.
But baby. I hope you manage to get some sleep soon. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, it was 5 pounds. My bad. See, I can't do time zones. I definitely can't do money.
Just call it quid.
5 gold pieces.
British sterling silver. That's proper money. Yeah, pound sterling. It used to be. Well, I don't know. Is the pound still worth more than the dollar?
Hell no.
Yeah,
Everything's
it is.
fiat currency. Are you kidding me?
Well, no. The pound at one point was worth more than the dollar, especially after they got off the.
Oh no. Is it worth? Yes, it is worth more than the dollar.
Yeah,
that's what I
the
thought.
only one I know
Yeah.
off the top of my head is that 50 pounds is about $60.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I thought you were saying, is it still worth it? Is it still tied to a pound of silver? And it's like, no, it's not.
Oh no, God, no. That's not what I was saying. No, hell no. Nixon got us off the gold standard in the States back in the day. So yeah, no. And technically we've been off it a long time before that, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Final hot take of the evening. If you're thinking I'm enjoying this game, but a spectator would find it boring, then the honest truth is you're bored with the game too. How do you say that? Broser? Bro
SR.
Bro SR. I mean, just the fact that they would call it that in and of itself feels like they should that should be a red flag right there.
I mean,
Really boring.
it's a take,
Are
all
really
right.
boring to spectators.
You know what else is hot? Fresh dog poo.
Well, we're too close to the end of the episode for that, but I was thinking though. So Shadow of the Demon Lord has a dungeon. I normally hate pre-made adventures. We have props. But Shadow of the Demon Lord has Dungeon of the Damned, which I absolutely love. It's enormous. It's like 10 levels. It's huge. It's very complicated, and it's not railroady at all. Like, you just basically have to go from point A to point B to keep going further down into the dungeon. And I was thinking, well, that actually would be really cool to run a bunch of groups through to try this whole one-to-one. And then I remember that the only way you can get from the first section to the second section is with a key that you have to get from one very specific monster. And as soon as that monster's dead and you take the key, everyone else is going to be stuck on the top level. So I was like, oh, well, never mind on that then. But that kind of mega dungeon might be interesting to try that with. Just, I don't know. It does not sound like something I'd enjoy, but I feel bad saying that without having actually tried it. So
It's fun for mega dungeons because it forces the players, not the characters, but it forces the players to be conscious of how deep they're going to go, knowing that they need to either find a safe place in the mega dungeon or find a way to get their butt back out.
yeah,
Like have time to get back out.
yeah. I mean, Shadow Dark does that kind of similar types of stuff too, but sometimes I just want to run adventures where they're stuck in the same place for days at a time, because then you got the resource management, which is fun.
Delicious.
Anyway.
Dungeon, just start cooking up the monsters.
On that
that show.
note, I think there's actually a cookbook for that, just for the record. Like literally,
Oh,
I think somebody wrote a cookbook.
Oh,
All
that's
right,
awesome. I love that
Daniel, why don't you tell us what you got coming up, where you're going to be, channels, links, events, all the things.
Biggest things I got going on right now, the constant thing at my channel is every dime that goes into my channel via either Patreon or YouTube goes directly into restoring cars that I then turn around to give away. Or at least I will. That's the ultimate goal. I've got a 74 Dodge Dart that needs to be shipped from New York to Alabama. That is the current goal for that, because that will be the first channel car, is fixing up that Dart and giving it away. But the big thing right now is Corvid Codex. I've got my book published on Lulu right now. The goal is to bring up enough capital through Lulu to get a little bit better publishing setup, probably through American founders. But that's my ongoing pulp anthology. Volume 2 will be due out July 1st, and Volume 1 is available as an ebook and as a physical. Here's a proof copy right here, and as a trade paperback. Right now at on
Great
Lulu.
cover.
Yeah, Patio Cakes did the cover, and it's absolutely fantastic. For those who don't know, that's a 1974 Dodge Dart that they're leaning on. That was kind of an homage to the channel. But you've got 7. Matter of fact, most of you probably know, if you pay any attention online to any kind of TTRPG stuff, you know probably at least 4 of the authors, because there's 6 authors and 7 stories in the first volume, and 2 of them have YouTube channels with streams, and one of them's published already elsewhere, and a couple of game designers, and they're all pretty active online. So
Nice. That's really cool. Can you send me a snapshot of that at some point, like later after the stream?
Sure.
Sweet. Books. Love books.
Books are good.
# buy physical media.
Yes.
The Common Nerd.
Yes, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, I am Jesse with the Common Nerd. I bring you pop culture and all things 33 Common Sense Lens. I am your working poor content creator, ladies and gentlemen. So by strictly a miracle of God, because boys and girls, my channel is a living testimony to, if you believe the Lord will provide, because holy cow, there's no reason I should be able to do this full time at the extremely small level I am. So shout out to all the wonderful folks out there that do that. But my friend Griffin will absolutely murder me if I do not mention this, especially on this stream with all of these fabulous folks out there in the chat. We are currently recruiting right now for kind of a split session campaign thing. So we've got a game, some game stuff we're trying to get set up right now to where we're going to do an alternative thing. We're going to do XCOM and we're going to do Warhammer 40K Wrath and Glory at the exact same time. I've never DM'd anything. I couldn't convince anybody else to GM it for me, so I'm gonna do it by very first time, all by myself for the Wrath of Glory Warhammer 40K universe. Fortunately enough, I know that universe really, really, really well, and we should be fine with that one. The other selling point I will give you that one is my buddy Griffin, who's been like a GM for 20 plus years. We'll be running XCOM. These are going to be sessions to where you can come in and out. Your characters don't have to stick around. You can come in, try out the universe, create a character, come in one time and leave if you want to, because the way that both of the games are set up, it's squad based. You've got a team of anywhere from 2 to 4, sometimes potentially a little bit more than that, people on a team. You got a mission to take care of. You go take care of that mission. When it's over, everybody's dead and done. The goal is to get those missions wrapped up in 2 or 3 sessions at the most. Griffin's got it nailed down to 1 for a few of his things, so nobody has to stick around for very long. But there's a bunch of really cool stuff. If you don't know anything about Warhammer 40K, we've got pretty much any kind of character you could possibly want for all the traditional type of classes and stuff you've seen, just a really warped version of it in Warhammer 40K. So come check that out. Follow me on all the social medias, join my Discord, and you guys can get more information about that and all of that kind of fun stuff. So we're trying to get a couple more players together so we can get that launched and ready to go, and it'll be a really, really good time. Other than that, I produce content 7 days a week. You'll either find a short or a full-blown video or a live stream on one of my channels. I'm on Rumble, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Kick, I'm on Pilled, I'm on Twitter, I'm on everywhere. Pretty much. The only place I'm not at it anymore is Odyssey. We'll probably end up doing some late night gaming here in about an hour or so. Probably some Marvel Rivals with Griffin and Miss Glow and a few of the other folks out there in the chat. I like to play games on Monday nights when I can play with the rest of the crowd. Thursday nights we do Is It Good? We're currently reviewing Daredevil Born Again Season 2, aka Netflix's Daredevil Season 5. And then Saturday I've got Comic Shop Talk with 32 Flavors of Nick Weiser. Friday nights we're doing Myst. We're doing a Myst replay. I haven't played that game since the late 90s. Yeah, I love. Oh God, it was literally like all the sounds are the same for like the 2022 version that they made with Unreal Engine, and I'm literally like I was having so many flashbacks playing that game.
Give
Oh,
me
I
red
love that. I
pages.
love it. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Ignore the red pages. Find me the blue pages. Don't listen to Sirius. Don't listen. Sorry. Anyway, I love those characters. But yeah, so we do that on Friday nights about 9 o'clock. Sunday, we've got a Bible study at 2 p.m. Then Sunday night, we've got Doctor Who, classic Doctor Who review is going on right now. Digny will be there, Sunker Maiden, and Griffin are my co-host for that one. On Thursday nights, it's Sunker Maiden and Tiny But Fierce for Daredevil Born Again for that one. If you've never watched Doctor Who before, our Sunday night show is a great time to come in. We're watching all the classic Who. You ain't got to deal with any of the modern nonsense BS. Every new series is essentially a fresh reintroduction to who the Doctor and his companions are. So it's a great way to join. We have an absolute blast. And you get to actually watch the show with us. So it's not just a traditional review. You're actually, if you've never seen it, you're going to get to watch the episode with us as well. You'll just have to deal with all of our pausing and rewinding and talking about things. But yeah, this was a blast. Eclectic Gloat will hopefully be on for some Doctor Who soon. Daniel, it's a pleasure to meet you, man. Chat, you guys have been fabulous. I found some more Warhammer 40K friends in the chat, and I love it. I don't have as many on my channel, so come follow me. I do Warhammer 40K. I do pop culture news and nerd entertainment, so if there's a fandom attached to it, I've probably done a video over it that you would enjoy. I just cover all that stuff all the time, so I appreciate you guys. This was fun. Yeah, this was
I will
fun.
have to tell my
I talk
my
a lot.
Lord. I will have to tell my Lord Guccifer to check you out. Like I
Oh
said,
yes, please. That'd be blessed.
he is the minis. I like
yeah.
Song of Ice and Fire, but that is about the only minis I've ever really been able to get into. So
There you go.
I am the Eclectic Goat. I am here, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, no longer on Discord. Did just join Substack. We'll see how that goes. That's kind of a new thing, like 3 days new specifically. I will be putting out the GloomRaider review later this week. Probably as a pre-record, but I may do it as a premiere I've never done one of those before, so we'll see how that goes too. Next week, 413, 1970s, Scott Robinson, Mark Miller, and Jeff D will all be here. She totes our goats. Yes, I do my best, Matt Norton.
Giggity.
We are then doing, the week after that, we are doing indie presentations, which we haven't done for a little bit, and we are talking about zombies and the undead. Jumping forward a little bit, I am going to have topics through the second week of May. So the 4th of May, I'm going to be doing a birthday stream, and so that's going to be really informal. And then the 11th of May, we're going to be finishing off season 2 of Slice and Dice with the Critical Role effect. We're going to talk about considering that. I feel the need to mention it since it came up a couple times in this. We're going to be talking about the role of those types of shows on role-playing and how it's affected how people think about role-playing. And then we are going to be ending Slice and Dice for a few months while we talk about Eraser, my fabulous mod, and a couple of other people are going to be talking about Babylon 5 and Crusades and doing a comparison as to why one worked so well and one was so terrible. We're going to break down cast, we're going to break down visuals, we're going to break down plots. And then after that, we are going to do my usual shows you've never seen for really random crap from the 1990s that lasted like one season and did terrible that no one ever watched. But we do have a few weeks before then. I just kind of want to update everyone on how things are going. And then, of course, we will restart with season 3. But this period of time, I tend to end up with a lot of cancellations. People have a lot of work issues. There's a lot of spring issues. And it gets a little bit rough to try and get people on and keep regular shows, which is why we do this in seasons. So I want to thank Daniel and the Common Nerd both for being here. I really appreciate you guys kind of doing this last minute thing. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. Daniel, your explanations were great. The Common Nerd, I have never had so many people in my chat flirt with a panelist before.
Well, why, thank you very much. I do my best.
But
and by the way, we crossed 2,600 subscribers tonight. It was probably from your chat out there coming in and subscribing when you guys dropping the link. So thank you guys so very much for that. Appreciate that, guys.
Woohoo! Sweet. Man, I'll be happy when I can hit 1,000.
This is my second time doing this. I was over 4K the first channel.
Oh, well, like I said, I'm still going to be happy to hit 1,000. So.
Oh, you'll do it.
But chat and panel both, thank you very much. I hope everyone has a wonderful night. And as always, happy headbutting.
It's a fucking good.
Eclectic Goats got videos of indie authors and cinema love. A passion for the weird and the strange. She's snappily dressed and only slightly deranged. Come and meet the eclectic goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy headbutting, come join the herd. Shows might be a little improper. We've got real zombie, fake whizzes the otter, pizza in one hoof, glass in the other, deciding which role-playing games we will cover. Come and meet the eclectic goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy headbutting, come join the herd. Got a thing for black and white screens, crappy horror with low budget scenes. Choose on the history, spits out the law. Time for another whiskey pour. Come and meet the eclectic goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy headbutting, come join the herd.